Um, so I'll kick us off. I am Marcella Twomley. I'm the current snack chair, and I have just a few announcements to go through, just about upcoming events. So this is our November community meeting. We'll have a few more community meetings before the school year's out. The next one will probably be January 20th. We have them on the third, Tuesday of every month right now. So be on the lookout after the holidays for that to come out. But we know everything with the holidays is kind of busy. So we're doing this one in November, and then we're taking a break in December, coming back refreshed, hopefully in January. Um, I'm going to drop a few things in the chat, but just to make community aware of if this is something that speaks to you. Um, Chapel Hill Parks and Recreation, in conjunction with the Family Support Network, which is run out of UNC's social work, has a few topics that they go through, I think once a month. Tomorrow's topic happens they'll have it at the public library. It's 10:30 to 12. It's a great presenter. She presented our sexual health trainings for SNAC last um, spring. So if you liked Felicia, Felicia's presenting about self-care tomorrow in conjunction with Parks and Rec and Family Support Network. I'm going to drop that information in the chat if that's something that speaks to you. You'd like some support, you'd like to talk, and I think the presentation is called the Recovery Garden. So if you would like some more support, that's a great place to go and seek support. Um, and then the ECAC work group will have a meeting virtually on Thursday. Alston's going to be leading that. That's at 7:45. Alston, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And if you would like the information for that, and you're not on this would be the adapted curriculum, and that's something that you're a part of. If you would like to just sign up for the snack email listserv if you're not on there, and we'll get you plugged in with Alston if that's something you'd like to attend. And then I'm going to drop some information too for the Catalyst program that's run out of NC State. This is a program for anyone who identifies as having an IEP, a 504, or is in the OCS program. It is STEM, it's like an extension. How would you describe this, Ben? An extension STEM program?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, the way it's basically a year-long STEM program for high school students. Anyone who's rising 9 to 12 is eligible, as you mentioned, with the 504 or an IEP. And it seems, from what we've heard, it's basically kind of like a prestigious program um, uh, that is something that looks really good for college and post-college. Yeah.
So I'm going to drop that in the chat
And
as.
Marcella, Alston also wanted to mention something, I think, about the adaptive curriculum group.
Yep. So she says it's 7:45 on Thursday, and you
Okay,
can reach out to her via email too if you need additional information or the link for that meeting as well. So
perfect.
I'm going to I'll drop all this information in the chat and have it outlined so that people want to go grab it in the chat. But without further ado, I think that's all my announcements. I don't know, Miss Robinson, did you have any announcements? Or it looks like Catherine has her hand raised.
If it's me, no, that's accidental.
Oh no, I think
Unless
Catherine
it's a
Pritchard.
different. Okay.
Sorry, wrong.
So
Yeah, I'm
that's
not sure
interesting
Catherine
because
has a
I don't
voice.
see my hand raised at all.
Okay,
No, I'm good.
Yeah,
you're
Thank you.
good.
I think we're all set.
I think we're set. All right. Well, I will let Kate Kennedy take away the presentation tonight about executive function. This is my favorite. This is my favorite topic to talk about. So I think it benefits all of us as parents and maybe, as neurodivergent people ourselves.
I wanted to, I feel like I should give you all my personal cell phone number so that we can chat about executive functioning because I love it so much. And my own friends and family are very tired of talking about it. So I have my email contact because that seemed professional, but don't hold back because it really
Okay.
is. It's it's the thing that probably gives me the most joy. So I'm always delighted when I get to speak about it. But my name is Kate Kennedy, and I'm the Director of Advanced Learning and Student Leadership in the district. That used to be called Gifted Ed, but I pushed hard to get a new name for it because it didn't really reflect the work that our department does. We work to support students who are identified as gifted, students who are in honors, AP, early college, dual enrollment, governor's school, and AVID. So basically anything that helps kids start to think about their next pathways into adulthood falls in our department. And we also work in conjunction with the 504 teams and the EC teams because we have students that are twice and trice and quadruply exceptional, meaning they have sort of, an area of strength with areas of challenge. Sometimes the area of strength hides the challenge, and sometimes the area of challenge hides the strength. And so that can be a very interesting space, and it can be a hard space to support and parent through. So we work together to team to make sure kids get what they need. And before I go any further, I also have to self-identify. I am the parent of a wonderful son named Liam who has severe and profound autism. Like, he has all of the autism. I don't know who else got any because he has so much. Very, very specifically impacted by his autism. He was an early diagnosis. He's now 30. So he was a little guy who everybody came to watch behind the mirror because they hadn't really seen a pre-diagnosed 2-year-old before. Now it's much more common, but in 1997, it was sort of unusual. So he was a very early diagnosed little guy with very, very specific autism. And I am so grateful for the support and education and love and connection that I received through the Chapel Hill-Carrboro City School District as a parent, that it makes my eyes water. Like, I kind of involuntarily cry when I talk about it, not in a bad way, but in this deep gratitude kind of way. It wasn't always fun. It often wasn't easy. We got into some really intense exchanges sometimes while we were advocating to get things that were right for Liam. But I always felt like people engaged in very good faith. So I will always be a special needs mom first. I sometimes forget when I attend IEP meetings as a staff member that I'm not a parent in that setting, but I'm a pretty fierce advocate. So just know you're with a fellow traveler. And with that, we'll get started. And I want to thank Fonda and Catherine for inviting me and for being such loving colleagues and always reaching across the table to make sure that we're in connection. I feel very, very lucky. So save my email, call me anytime. Let's chat about executive function. It's super fun for me. I want you to think about ways to support your learner in the quest to improve their executive function skills. That's sort of the formal title, but the informal is, why can't my child remember to turn in their homework or their book bag? I can't. I literally cannot even. What is happening? It's a garbage dump. It's an archaeological dig. Combined with infinite campus, absolutely not. No, I can't, not without a support group or a safe space. When you go in and look at what's happening with missing work, grades that don't seem to track or match your student's ability, all of that can be part of that challenge. And today we're going to talk about ways to explore what exactly is executive function. It's become a very popular catchphrase. People talk a lot about it. When I first started with my work with executive function, no one knew what it was. We called it organization or backwards planning. Its twin sisters were procrastination and perfectionism, but we didn't really have this overall umbrella. So we're going to talk about sort of the examples and the definition. When I start to talk about it, you may feel like I've been in your house. Like, gracious heavens, how could that possibly be? How do you know that? And it's I do have a tiny crystal ball, so that is here, but mostly it's because it falls under this big umbrella of things that you can expect to have happen. And then also ways to support your learner as they strengthen their executive function skills. So what is executive functioning? It is self-regulation skills and mental processes that help us plan. They help us focus attention, remember instructions, juggle multiple tasks. Think of it as sort of like the air traffic controller system in a very busy airport. It helps manage arrivals and departures on multiple runways. And the brain needs this skill set to filter out distractions, to help prioritize tasks, to set and achieve goals, and to control impulses. That's not just my made up version. That's Harvard giving us their working definition. So what brain functions are involved in executive functioning? It taps into your working memory. This is our ability to hang on to information and then use it in short periods of time. Think memorizing your multiplication tables and doing that work so that when you go to turn around and use it, you have it. Then there's mental flexibility. This lets us shift attention. It lets us kind of follow rules of engagement. And it allows us to be a little bit bendy mentally when different demands are placed on us. The next one is important. It's self-control. I think of it now sort of more like self-regulation. This lets us set priorities. It lets us delay gratification. It helps us resist impulse. And it helps us sort of work away from non-productive decisions. I want it to be really clear that we can learn ways to manage the skills around executive function. It's not so much that you have them or you don't have them. It's that we can isolate them and directly work to practice them. So the things that we can work to practice around our attention control, being able to kind of manage some inhibition control. We can improve working memory. We can kind of practice cognitive flexibility. We can think through reasoning. We can problem solve. And my favorite is planning and learning how to manage time. I am an executive function coach privately, and almost every single client that I work with, they are time blind, meaning they really honestly cannot tell if something's going to take 2 minutes or 20 minutes, which makes it almost impossible for them to effectively plan. If you're wondering if maybe your family member, child, partner, coworker has some of this, the answer is just straight up yes, they do. They sure do. My partner's daughter has probably one of the biggest doses I've ever seen. We were at the beach and it was like Friday night, and you know how long those dinner lines can be. And we had been very clear about what time we were going to leave. And his daughter has hair, down to the middle of her back. This is an important part of the story. At 6:30, our reservations start. And at 6:15, I said, okay, remember, it's time to go. We're just going to run down the street for our dinner. And she got up to go take a shower at 6:15, and we had 6:30 dinner reservations, because in her head, that was an appropriate amount of time to wash her 4-foot long hair and prepare like Rapunzel to get ready to go out to dinner. And there's no possible way that could happen. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't manipulative. It was nothing. It's just she really could not manage to predict that time. That's a very, very common component. The ways it can show up in your family, you can find that your student might be a blurter. Especially when they're younger, they haven't really learned how to self-regulate that. They might tell their teacher that they're wrong. They might interrupt their classmates. They might interrupt you. They might interrupt dinner partners as adults. They might have that time blindness. They might struggle with managing their responses. They might tend to overreact to a small irritation can become a very big response. They sometimes can get stuck, meaning it can be hard for them to start something. It can be hard for them to stop something that they're doing. Think Lego building, think Minecraft, think book reading, think whatever the desired task is, they can really struggle to stop and switch gears. They can struggle with forgetting directions or being able to hear the directions and break them down into chunks. They, in our older elementary and middle and high school students, they are very poor at accurately predicting scores or project success. They think they did terribly and they did great. They think they did great and they missed major components of the work. They may not be able to prioritize most important tasks, or they sort of know it's an important task and then the desire to avoid that task takes over and suddenly they're doing something else. Personally, I do this when I was doing my graduate work. My closets were very clean because I would rather do this thing over here than do this scary task that I'm not sure how to start and I'm not sure I'll do it correctly. So I'm just going to alphabetize the spice shelf or fill in the blank of what bizarro task I decided to take on. Freezing when it's time to start a task is very common. Task initiation is a huge piece. And then the actual physical management of their materials, misplacing materials, homework, books. Sometimes it's like a tiny tornado of chaos around them. My partner's other child was a Boy Scout, and he would just walk along like Linus with his blanket, with his sleeping bag. Like he never like repacked his backpack and his sleeping bag. He just walked around with it like unrolled. And his scoutmaster was like, I have never seen anybody do that down the mountain. But the idea of like how to put things back in order was something that was a real struggle point. Here are some of the scaffolds, things that you can do at home. Now, I am a parent and an educator, so I just want to say gently and lovingly that if your response is, yeah, no kidding, what a genius you are, thanks for the suggestions. I understand. It's easier to say, establish a routine than it is to kind of figure out how to do that. But I do want to avert some ideas that are obvious, but with repetition and structure, you can really start to see it stick. And especially with SNAC, when we have families from pre-K all the way up to high school, I think it helps to understand that you can never really start too early. The first is to establish routines. This lets a student's brain rest. If you think of it like it stops the spinning of what do I do? 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 You pre-decide what you're going to do. And as much as possible, you establish those routines. Same time, same place, same way. To this day, my daughter will say to me, when any of us are stressed, she'll say, check schedule, check schedule. She's 33, but that language was part of our survival, living with a child with severe autism and a neurotypical-ish sibling. Creating a space to do homework is also a lifesaver. It also lets the brain rest. If you're doing work in the same place that you play or you rest or you relax, your brain can get kind of confused, like, which task are we doing right now? Even just the corner of a table, when you set out the materials and say, okay, now it's homework time, can be a relief. It tells the brain, okay, so we're here and this is the work that we're going to do. Minimizing clutter and distraction is important. It can be very hard for the brain to keep spinning, spinning, spinning. It's kind of like the equivalent of having too many tabs open on your computer, and it just gets slower and slower and slower. So as much as possible to strip that down is helpful. Creating, and that also I want to say is not always fun for people who have executive dysfunction or struggles, because it is not obvious or intuitive how to do that. And so helping a student create that space, or getting help so that you too can create that space, because oftentimes there's more than one person in the family that has that struggle. Creating and using lists. It's a very low tech but high yield strategy. When I work with students privately, I always ask that they have a paper pencil agenda. They do not want to have a paper pencil agenda. They argue, they complain, they avoid. But if I had to pick one task that indicates that somebody might be successful in their executive function progress, it's students who learn to write things down. Again, it gives their brain a chance to rest. I do hybrid work with kids where they'll sometimes use technology in some cases, and then they support it with a written version. It can be a whiteboard, it can be a family calendar, it can be a paper pencil agenda. But if you told me, I'm going to give you $500 to predict who's going to be successful in terms of being able to manage their workloads in high school, I'll tell you it will be the kid who writes it down. Creating a schedule to clean out notebooks, book bags is key. If you do it once a week, it can't really get super horrific. I mean, it can, but at least you have a chance of not being completely underwater. If I told you some of the things I found in book bags, I don't know what to say. If you've ever gone to a concert and the people who inspect bags use tools, there's a reason. If you've ever seen somebody look in your bag using a drumstick, that's a good choice, because you really don't want to put your hand into the depths of that darkness, because you don't know what it's going to touch. I have put my fingers into dead bananas, moldy oranges, unlimited numbers of sweat socks, and just, it's gross. So if you do it at least once a week, it can't really get horrible. And then your student has a chance to manage it themselves, because it's not so big and horrible that they can't fix it. This next one's really important. I'm a single mom, and 2 children, full-time job, teacher, administrator. It's so much faster for me to do things for people than it is to teach them how to do it themselves, be it my own children, other people's children, any person. It's sometimes just so fast to just do it. But then you're not building the capacity for anyone else to learn it. So small doses of a student learning to take care of their own work is so powerful. I think of it like, I don't know if any of your kids went to OT or are still in OT. I loved the OT spaces. It was so helpful. And sometimes it was mixed in with PT, and they were sharing space. And I just remember the balance beam being a good analogy. The taller the balance beam is, the harder the fall. And the younger your child is when you're helping them learn how to do things themselves, if they make a mistake or if there's an error, the fall is very short. And you can pick right back up and you can fix it. If you wait until they're in their young adulthood before they have to experience that self-advocacy and independence, now the consequences actually are pretty high. And so the anxiety around, can they do that themselves or can they not, becomes pretty scary. So if you have younger children, it's a great opportunity to start now. If your children are older, there's no better time than today because they're only getting closer to their independence and their launch. And I also want to say, like, my son is very, very specifically impacted by his autism. I don't really like to talk about functioning levels because I think it sort of us versus them does that to us, even as parents. Oh, my child's low functioning. Oh, we don't have anything in common because your child's high functioning. That's always been hard and kind of painful. But my son has very, very high needs, and his age appropriate self advocacy is actually pretty good. He can dress himself. He can brush his own teeth. He can handle his bathroom tasks. He can make his own bed. He can choose his own food selections. He can read a schedule. And that's because the Hill-Carrboro City School District taught him how to read. I still don't know how they did it. But every child has the ability to make some choices and to be as independent as they can be. My son lives in a group home, and in a way, it's like his college. It's his independent life, and every student has that right to be as independent as they can be. And finally, this one's my most favorite. Use household chores as safe practice. I grew up on a farm, and I was in 4-H. It's like Girl Scouts, but for country kids. And it's for boys and girls. It's not gender specific. And I grew up taking, I had these cooking projects, and I had animal husbandry projects, and I had to like keep official records. But I learned how to do chores kind of not on my own. I mean, I got taught how to do them, but I want you to think about like cleaning your bedroom as an executive function task. If you just say clean your room, I mean, I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you want me to do? Are we talking baseboards and windows? What are we talking about? So this idea of you're going to clean your room and we're going to do it together. The first thing we do is we pick up all the garbage, and we can have like a little garbage icon, and it could be a visual picture, or it could be a written checklist, depending on how your student learns best. And then we're going to put laundry in the hamper, and then we're going to pull up the comforter, and then we're going to put the pillows at the top of the bed, and then we're going to close the closet doors and push the dresser drawers closed. So then the room is clean. But if we just say clean your room, you can say that and you come back and they're under the bed playing with, the Lego set that they forgot they had. So if you want to see it, explicitly teach it. And if you can't capture it in a checklist, it's probably too complicated. But those are some practical at-home scaffolds that you can use. I love this part. Who needs executive function support? Students with attention deficit disorder, students who have anxiety, students who might be on the autism spectrum or continuum, students who are gifted, students who are under environmental stress, students who are waiting for their frontal lobes to fully develop. Basically, that's everybody. All of us can benefit from that executive function support. Routines make everything better. I will say it's my favorite thing to talk about. When I left the gifted ed specialist world and became a district level administrator, the thing I missed most was working directly with students. So to me, like setting up a system and a schedule is just like the most fun ever. I don't know that my family loves it as much as I do. And my partner's adult children, I'm not sure they love it like I love it. Like, want help organizing your closet? They're like, no, I think I'm good. But that's the best fun ever. So as adults, we need that support. Our students need it. And And our students who have intersectionalities, meaning they have multiple diagnoses going on, the idea that you're just supposed to automatically absorb this information, it doesn't really work very effectively. And so explicitly breaking it down is the key. I'm really glad that you invited me, and I would love to have this next part be kind of a conversation about structures and systems that are working for you, that aren't working for you. We have our fabulous EC team here. They can speak to IEP and 504 suggestions. I know the answer is almost always the answer to any question is it depends, because individualized education plans are just that, they're individual. And for privacy's sake, I know that we want to make sure we don't violate that. But I'm excited and happy to stop sharing my screen and also to enter into a conversation and see what kind of questions you have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. That was fantastic. I will just add, as an administrative note, we run these meetings as webinars. So if anyone wants to ask a question for Kate, you can raise your hand using the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then I will grant you permission to talk. So you'll see a little pop-up, and then you can accept that, and then you can ask your question.
I'm going to share with you an anecdote because I think this perfectly illustrates your room cleanup situation. I have a high support needs daughter, and then I have a kindergartner who I suspect probably is ADHD like everybody else in our family. Um, and I told her one day, I said, you need to clean your room. Cleaners are coming, clean your room. Catastrophic meltdown. And I'm like, what is wrong with this? And I was like, I don't understand why this is so difficult. But I was thinking about that. And then you said you need to make like a list. It needs to be clear, right? Because the problem is like you need to do this with me. And really what she's saying is because I don't know how to do this myself. Like I don't know where to start, right? So this task of clean your room is just total overwhelm. Especially when everything you're 5 and your Legos are all over the floor and it gets wild in there. So
Yeah. And I think about it like we're coming up on Thanksgiving. I mean, heaven to Betsy, Thanksgiving is like an executive function Olympic event.
mhm.
I mean, imagine if we just walked downstairs and said, "Okay, let's have Thanksgiving dinner." Well, holy heck! You've got a frozen turkey. You have all the sides. You didn't set the table. You don't know who's coming. I mean, you have to start this week's really like a long time in advance to have all those pieces moving. And yet we just expect kids are supposed to know how to do it. I cannot tell you the list of checklists I've made in my life. For myself, I mean, you can see I'm operating off a checklist right here. For my own children, for it's like our love language in our family. Check schedule. When I would put my daughter to bed, my son needed a visual checklist, and at one point he had like a physical icon with Velcro checklist, like,
Mhm.
and then he moved to pictures. And then we understood like he really was like he got what was going on because he would remove the pictures he didn't want to do and he started hiding them around the classroom and the house. Like he was very good at taking undesirable tasks and dropping them behind the bookshelf because he figured out they couldn't go back there to get them. So it's fascinating to me, like how the brain works. But that checklist lets your brain rest. I think of it like going to the grocery store, and you think you're just running in for a couple items and you don't get a cart. And then you're holding all the things and then they're dropping and they're falling and it's chaotic. And it's because your brain doesn't really have a structured way to hold on to the information. So the more you can set yourself up for success, set your kids up for success, it can be very low tech. It can be very simple. But this idea of overting um, the expectation that there's going to be a clear and systematic way to know what is expected. If we're always just verbally talking, I feel like for kids, the stress of that must just be so big to have to sit and listen to people who are just, blah, blah, blahing. And it's like smoke signals. It's there and then it's gone. And there's no evidence of what happened and what they're supposed to do. So that idea of saying, what do you need to do? I don't know. Where could you go look? I don't know. What about Google Classroom? What about Infinite Campus? What about phone a friend? What about your notes? These are for our older kids, but having that clear expectation is really, really a relief. And we may not have big burning questions, but if you have anything, please let me know.
We just got one from Sarah. She says, since you mentioned OT earlier, I'm curious about how you see praxis and motor planning as connected to executive function.
Oh yeah, they're like entry level. How do I move my body? With my son, he didn't know he had to sit down before I went on the slide. Right? Like that's key. or you will fall. And so I just remember his occupational therapist like showing him a list of things that he would do to be able to go down the slide. He was a teach guy. He did like structured tasks. And I will always think of his very first occupational therapist. She always did left to right because it kind of pre-taught like reading, like we're going to go left to right, words go from this side to that side. And then we start and we do the task and then we put it away. And she would put the finished thing in this finished basket. And it was always to the right. And he put himself in the finished basket. Like he was done. And so that was his way of communicating, I'm done. He understood that there were steps and that the occupational therapist had broken them down, and she had visual cues to support his body, his proprioceptive understanding of where he was in space. And he really took it to heart, and he put his whole 3-year-old self into the finished basket. And the message was very clear. He is nonverbal, but also he can communicate because the message was clearly received. We are done here. But that was a trick the occupational therapist taught us.
You got another anonymous question, which is how do you implement supports with kids who are resistant to try to resistant or try to avoid supports?
Yeah, that is very, very common. There's a couple things, and part of it depends on how old your student is. And I just want to say to you lovingly, it's very, very normal. That doesn't make it fun. I had a neighbor who was older than me and whose kids were older than me, and she would say, oh, that's completely normal. And it's absolutely unfun. And there might have been some swearing mixed into that. One of my work goals is I don't swear in recorded meetings, but she did. It's not fun. And that need to be independent overrides the need to accept help, especially from a parent. And it's developmentally very appropriate. It's how they become independent. It's how they can live without you in the world. If I told you when your child was 8, I'm going to take your child and you're not going to see them for 6 months, and they're not going to live with you, and you're not going to see them for 6 months. That's called kidnapping, and you'd be horrified. But when they do it at 20, that's called I'm in college and I'm hanging out with my roommate over Thanksgiving break, and I'll see you at winter break. Right? So how do we get there from 8 to 18? Well, it's this tiny little series of separations. So their need to separate from you takes over their need to get help from you. So sometimes you have to be sneaky about it. You have to kind of, sometimes one parent has a little bit of an easier time than the other with that. Like let the offside parent kind of create the list or give the suggestion. Sometimes other adults can do it. because they're not you. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just their need to differentiate from you overrides their need to get help from you. And oftentimes, the older the child is as they're making that separation, the more hostile the behavior can be as they're trying to say, hey, no, I'm doing this myself. I don't need you to help me when absolutely I need you to help me. I think of it like toddlerhood and adolescence. If you think of toddlerhood as first adolescence, it's when, they have to pour the milk themselves or they have to tie their shoes themselves. Puberty engages that same thing. It's just bigger and sort of scarier. So enlist a friend. If you have a safe adult, a third adult who can sometimes introduce some of this, that can be great. Oftentimes they'll listen to teachers when they won't listen to you. So if you can get the teacher to suggest it, oftentimes they'll take that advice. And any trusted extra adult, scout leader, church leader, grandparent, friend, neighbor, older adult, not older adult, older child. Like sometimes there can be the cool neighbor kid. I was shameless in that respect, getting the cool neighbor kid to come help with some of those things, because then they're still allowed to separate from you and they're still getting the help that they need. Don't take it personally. It can be pretty rotten. And it's that need to separate. If that happens, send me a text and we'll talk, because it really hurts your feelings and it's infuriating, but very normal.
We have my daughter's got a pretty hardcore PDA profile. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways that we try to make executive function work in our house is to make Alexa remind her to go to the bathroom, remind
Wow.
her that it's time for the bus, like make this external thing.
Yes.
Because we found that when it's mom or dad, it's not taken as well.
Yes.
So if you're familiar with like persistent drive for autonomy is what we like to call it.
Yes.
Um, that's, I mean, I know you are, but for everybody else who's listening, it's like that, you told me to do it. I'm definitely not doing it now.
And I
Um,
wanted to do it. And now that you said I have to do it, now I absolutely can't do it.
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we've like made external
Yes.
reminders about, sorry, a 5-year-old.
Never sorry.
Okay.
Very, very helpful. And, when I was parenting, now I am going to sound like I'm 100 years old, but there wasn't the internet and YouTube, and there weren't so many ways that you could click on and get ideas and help. But there's so many people who are sharing their story, and there's so many ways to hear ways that you can do things differently, and that you're not alone. I'm glad for that. It can be kind of overwhelming sometimes, but also it can be pretty isolating when you feel like you're the only person whose student struggles in that way. And I think something that was the hardest for me when my son was young, I could feel judgment from 100 miles away. I could smell it. I can't even tell you how I knew, but I just knew, like, when I was around another parent or a professional that was judging, that really was my kryptonite. You could not know how to do something, and that never fazed me, but that you're judging me because you think you know it better than me. Oh, that was the hardest. So making sure that you have supports with other parents who get it is so important. I remember there was a school staff member, and this is years and years ago, who said, you just need to be his mommy. We'll take care of the other pieces. It was so dismissive and erasing and condescending. I don't have the luxury of just being his mommy. I mean, I'm a project manager. I am a advocate. I am an expert on my son, and he is nonverbal as the day is long. And so somebody's got to go to bat for him. Um, so I've been on I've been in that space, and having a child who learns differently from the majority of their peers, it can be very lonely parentally. So that's why I'm so glad that you have each other, and why I'm always so kind of emotional when I get to be with you. And Fonda and Catherine know. I accost Fonda. I think Fonda's first day at work, I was like, "Hi, I love you," and she was, it was an abrupt introduction, but I wouldn't have been able to take care of my son without the people who do the work that they do. So, love. Any other questions, Ben? What you got?
Yeah, I'm looking. If anyone has anything, raise a hand, drop it in the chat, use the Q&A. These things all work.
Mostly, it's for me. It's just a love letter to you as parents and professionals.
For sure. I mean, I can
So,
pepper you with my own questions if you'd like.
oh, bring it. It's fun, fun.
So, uh, like for those moments where we can't be there to supervise or provide scaffolds to help our kids who struggle with motor planning with uh, executive function. Like, how would you advise me to help, like, my son pack his backpack before he leaves school so that when he gets home, we don't have like the disaster in the backpack, or like when you're walking out of school, like these things should be in your bag and you can carry these things, but not those things. Um, how would you recommend doing that when we can't be there?
Yeah. So part of it can be age specific. So you want to make sure it's appropriate to their age, and then I limit how much stuff they take, which limits how much stuff they have to bring back. Um, and that can be hard because oftentimes our kids are sort of collectors. They like to, I'm going to call it hoarding, but I mean that in the most, they're collectors. They collect beautiful things. So they want to take their beautiful things with them. Um, and if you can enlist the teacher and the teaching assistant, sometimes they can help. And a lot of it is just habitual. And this idea of how many repetitions does it take to make a habit stick? Depending on functioning levels, it can be 1 to 3, and it can be 33. And so just the persistent repetition of this is how we get ready to go to school, and this is how we take things back from school. And then this is how we hang up our book bag, and this is how we unpack our lunchbox and put it in the dishwasher, and this or the into the sink. And then I try to do as much as I can not in the morning. I mean, I still can feel the internal clock of the bus coming at 4 a.m. I swear to God, those buses come at the absolute crack of midnight. It's not even light out. They're here so early. So as much as possible, trying to have some of that done in advance. So whatever's going in is what's coming back. And then just having a structured system of this is how we put things into the backpack and this is how we get them out. Less in means less to manage. And then everything's labeled because it's going to disappear when it gets to school. And the hope that it comes back, the only hope is if it's labeled. And the same time, the same bat channel, the same repetition, everything the same. And many of our guys are visual learners. And so visually having things make sense. I loved bento boxes for that reason, because it kind of tells you what to do and where to put things. Like, oh, this is my protein. Because you know how I know? It says protein on the bottom of the little box. I love the Yum box. It says, crackers. This is where my crackers go. This is where my protein goes. This is where my vegetables go. It's visually structured and my brain can rest. And I think our kids need that too. And
Thank
be
you.
nice to your teachers, because there's one of you and there's 25 of them.
All right, looks like we got another question. Um, we got a couple. Okay, here we go. What resources do you or others have for finding age-appropriate goals for IEPs, chores at home, etc.? The internet is amazing, but also full of conflicting information. There's lots out there these days about reducing demands, and it's hard to gauge which demands at home or at school are useful, attainable, and appropriate to implement. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree so much. Um, the internet, love it, hate it.
Yeah.
Helps, overwhelms, makes you feel great, makes you feel horrible. I
And this,
want you
I,
to
I can interrupt for one
trust.
second. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned. She said she was talking about fourth and first graders specifically.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
kids,
prime
two kids.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are prime. That's beautiful prime time. Um, Trust your gut. I don't know if you get told that all the time, and that's not helpful, but you're the expert and you know your family and you know what your family needs and what's important to your family. I once flipped my, I can't swear. I had a really hard reaction because somebody told me not to let my son have his little airplane sized bottle of soda. And they earnestly suggested that perhaps water would be a better choice. Yeah, no kidding. Thanks so much for your feedback. That's shockingly not helpful. We're surviving at my house. And if that half mini can of Sprite is what gets us through, don't talk to me about that. After that outburst, I got a, a helpful flyer for counseling support. So, I mean, yikes. But you know your child best and you know what your family needs, and what your family needs could be different than another family. I wanted my son to learn how to do laundry. And I remember a principal was like, no 12-year-old needs to do laundry in Chapel Hill. Like there was this kind of like yucky. I'm like, well, my family actually does need support in that area. And I think he could sort and he could put it in and he could put the soap in and he could push the button. And that's an independent task that I think he could manage. And did anybody else think that was appropriate? No, not really. But in our family, it kind of was. I think having a conversation, like a thought partnership with someone to say, what kind of things do I really want my child to be able to do independently? And then how do we backwards make a goal for that? Because there are people who can write a goal for anything because that's what they do all day, every day. And that's where the partnership's so important because you know what your child needs to be able to do. Like maybe you have 3 kids and putting a coat on makes your head explode because you can't get 3 kids in their coats. So for you and your family, getting their coats on is key or nobody can get out the door. So being able to independently put their coat on is important. Think about what matters most to your family to make your life move forward, and then backwards plan the goal. And you are the expert on your child. And when someone tells you you're not, that's a flag. You're part of the team. You don't get to bully your team. You don't get to browbeat your team. You don't get to demand things from your team, but you do get to have conversations around what your child needs.
We got another uh, good anonymous question, which was about um, younger kids, 8-year-old, not eating lunch at school, and then
Oh, yeah.
obviously having issues later when they get home because they're starving. So, what tips could you offer to try to keep kids on task for things like that that are outside of the classroom?
Yeah, that is so big. First off, I can't eat at school. Have you ever been to a school cafeteria? Oh my goodness. It is a sensory circus. Um, so I would get as much high quality protein in your kid as you can before you get them out the door. And whatever kind of high protein, high density foods that you can get so that they can have high caloric, high density food in that they can eat quickly, and then practice that at home. Like, I know it's really loud and it could be really busy and maybe lots of people are talking, but make sure they can open their lunches themselves, make sure they can navigate so it's as easy as possible. It's finger food, it's high interest, high demand, or low new. Like whatever it is, either they want to eat the same thing every single time, let that happen because you just want to get calories in. And especially as our kids, if anybody's taking any medications, I mean, really, one of the ways sometimes doctors used to say you were at a therapeutic dose of your ADHD meds is your lunchbox came back full because you had no appetite. And so I would also heavily plan on snacks as soon as they walk in and build your window around that because that is a very real situation. Um, like get as many calories in them before and as quickly as you can after, and then make whatever food that they have very easy for them to eat, very quick access, and then really kind of practice like how can we get some food in you quickly so that then you play with your friends or then you whatever, but like time it, like practice it, like let's pretend, let's play a game, how much food can we get in before the bell rings, like this is how much time you have. Remember, they're time blind too. So they may not know how much time 20 minutes is. And then all of a sudden it's time to pack up and go.
We have another amazing question because it literally could have been written by me. It's great. But it was written by Alyssa. I have two neurodivergent kids, one ADHD and one autistic and ADHD. They do well at school and come home and completely collapse. Any tips on how to help them with burnout at home? Weekday nights are so hard. And yeah, I will echo all that. Yep.
Yeah. First off, I love you and it's not your fault. I call it the iceberg effect. What professionals see is the tip of the iceberg. It's the pretty sparkly part. Isn't it fun? Under the waterline is what sank the Titanic. And no one else can see it but you. So they hold it together at school and they melt down at home. So it's not your fault. It's very normal. And I would build in time for it and just name it. Like, I don't know what you're like when you come home. I am probably a level 7 introvert who has to do a level 10 extroverted job. Okay, so it's pretty mismatched. I have structures and systems to support me not being horrible to people when I come home. One involves pajama pants, another involves a snack and water. Because as you know, at school, it's very hard to eat enough and drink enough because that means you also have to go to the bathroom and you have to like navigate the sensory insanity that is happening to you at school. So don't take it personally. It's not your fault. You didn't cause it, and give as much grace as possible. Get them fed and watered as fast as you can and give as much downtime as you can. And also, if this is something that's happening very consistently, documenting that is important because folks at school may not see it. So if you can keep kind of just a basic running record of what it looks like at home, what the meltdown looks like, and it could be as simple as frequency, duration, and intensity. Like 4 out of 5 school nights, this outburst lasted for this many minutes at this level of intensity. That's data. So that folks are then going to have to kind of think through it with you about what can we do to support that, because this is what it looks like at home and they're not seeing it at school. So it's an important kind of data. It's qualitative, meaning what you're seeing with words, you're sharing it, but it can be a piece of quantitative when it gets turned into 4 out of 5 times for X amount of minutes across X amount of intensity. Once I started thinking of things as data, I was less fun at cocktail parties, but it really does help you kind of like, oh, I know what's happening here. It lets you normalize it. It kind of like, I remember it sort of took the heat out of it. Our outbursts at our family were big. my son got very frustrated, like when I would wear my hair in a ponytail, because like he overgeneralized that if mom's hair's up, she's probably mad, tired, or has thrown in the towel, right? If my hair's yanked up in a knot, things aren't going well for anybody, probably. And so he would start to pull my hair out of the ponytail. And then we realized that that could be a problematic behavior if he starts pulling people's hair, because now he could get arrested, right? Like, you can't do that. And so I accidentally left my hair up, and then he saw it and tried to take it down. And then I couldn't let him, because now we're in a thing where we can't reinforce that. And I had new neighbors, and they heard him shouting, and they called the police because they thought that someone was being, tortured or abducted. And then the sheriff comes to the door. I'm like, "Hi, it's so nice to meet you. This is my son. He has autism. I'm running a behavior intervention. These are how many times he watched the police." The sheriff was like, "That's excellent data. We're going to record on our list that you have a child with autism. So if there's any other calls, please tell us how we can help you." It turned into kind of a nice thing. And then the neighbors were horrified because the police went over and told him they're fine. He has autism. You're new here. Sound travels weird. And I got pink bubbly wine from the neighbor because they were so horrified that they had called the police. But, those meltdowns are no joke. And you got to be nice to yourself when they happen. And you just have to kind of, as much as you can, understand that that's their safe place where they can let it out. It's normal, but it's not fun.
All
I
right,
had
folks.
this.
Yeah. So go ahead, Marcel.
Sorry, I'm sharing now because I had this situation happen with my youngest, and one of the things is like I just checked in. Like I don't want to cause issues with teachers, or I don't want to say too much, but yeah, I just checked in and said, "Hey, this is what I see at home. Is this what happens in school? I'm just curious. Can you tell me?" And it opened up a conversation that was able to happen at conferences that was really like productive. And it allowed me to ask my daughter questions that were more targeted and specific about what particular things bother her about her day and kind of plan supports for those particular instances. Um, that like kind of reduced, not that this always works, but it was able to open up conversations that were because I have no idea. We don't know what happens at school. Um, but I was able to ask some targeted questions and then be like, okay, well, when these things happen, here's the plan for how to cope with that, and advocate for yourself in situations that, are boiling over at home, emotional regulation's out of control. Um, but, kind of planning and building in the support, asking the targeted questions, because the teacher was able to reveal things that I don't think my daughter at 5 could tell me, right? Like
Yes.
too complicated. Um,
And I love the idea of you're sort of co-detecting together. Like, you have a lens at home that they can't see, and they have a lens at school that you can't see. And together you're starting to get this kind of 360 wraparound vision of what's happening as your child's learning how to, if possible, use their words to tell you what's happening. I mean, my son's level of impairment was so specific, he really never could tell me, um, which can be dangerous, which can be terrifying. Um, I think of it like he's nonverbal, but that doesn't mean he doesn't communicate. I went and got him at his group home for lunch, and he is beloved at the restaurant. He goes every Saturday. They train all the wait staff to be his waiter. They will never take the ahi tuna off the menu because it is his favorite thing, and he gets it every time. And when we're done, he runs right back into the house and doesn't even look back over his shoulder. Now, I laugh and say, "Good visit. Nice to see you. Bye." But it lets me know he's comfortable. He's happy. He's home. He wants to get into his comfy pants and have his Sunday afternoon, just like every other 30-year-old man who just had lunch with his mother. Like, "We're done here. Thanks for coming." Right? Like, that's the goal. And sometimes our kids show us things in different ways, but that doesn't mean they're not communicating. he can't talk, but he can communicate. And the more we can think through that lens, like what are we seeing and how can we be a detective to figure out how to get them what they need, and keep in loving relations with the school officials and teaching staff, and because we're all on the same team. Now that doesn't mean we agree all the time. We don't, and that's how we sort of like rub the rough edges. I'm so amazed that people knew things to get my son to do stuff I never thought that he would be able to do. And because of them, he can. I wouldn't have known to make him do those things, because when he doesn't do it for them, it doesn't break their heart. But when he can't do it for me, it breaks my heart. And so, they're braver than me in a lot of ways. So I think whatever that is, we have to hang on to them.
We're at 7:07. So if anyone has any last questions, now is definitely the time to ask before we wrap up. All right, going once, going twice. All right, I'm gonna call it. Kate, thank you. This is amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. And I feel kind of like I got to come home for a little bit. That's what it feels like. So thank you to Fonda and Catherine, and thank you to Snack. I was here when you started, however many years ago, and I'm real grateful. So thank you. And really, I'm not kidding. If you have fun executive function questions for yourself or for your children or your family, it really is my fun. So reach out. You have my email, and I'd be more than happy to
Don't
brainstorm
tell
with
me
you.
that.
No, I mean it. Like you can see it's
This is my favorite topic.
yeah, I know. I can make checklists like it's my job job. So Catherine and Fonda are so kind to me to let the crossover take place. And that's not always like that. So I just want to make sure I'm really clear about my gratitude there.